Okay, so let's start with the definition of the hypothesis testing. Okay, so once we said hypothesis testing, mga anak, this is the act in statistics wherein the analyst tests the assumption, okay, regarding on on a population parameter. So may nagsabi sa inyo kanina na assumption po pagdating ng hypothesis testing. Okay? And dito po kay hypothesis testing, nakadepende po tayo doon sa nature ng data na meron na po tayo. Okay, just like what I said, it is better if if we are already done gathering the data and the data was already available. Okay, para po alam na po natin or we can make our own conclusion na po out of it. Okay? So itong hypothesis testing, mga anak, it is used also to assess, okay, the plausibility of the hypothesis by using yung sample data. Okay, pag sinabi natin plausibility, parang makapagbigay tayo ng reason, okay, kung bakit natin i-accept or kung bakit natin i-reject. Okay? Kasi dito, mga anak, meron tayong kailangang patunayan. Okay? And also, this test provides evidences concerning po yung credibility ng hypothesis natin given of the data or given the data. Okay? So, dito kay hypothesis, more on sample lang po yung ginagamit natin instead of population. Okay? Here are the general idea of hypothesis testing involves. Okay, unang-una is to make your own or to make an initial assumption. Okay? So, very important to mga anak na kung saan, let's say doon sa research paper ninyo, once na nakapag-create na kayo ng statement of the problem, mas maganda kapag mag-create na rin kayo right after nung SOP ninyo ng initial assumptions. Lalong-lalo na mga anak doon sa part ng SOP ninyo na ang hinahanap ninyo is yung significance. Okay, if there's a significance relationship between the two factors or the two variable, etc., etc. Okay, para later on your conclusion on your chapter 5, okay, hindi na kayo mahihirapan kasi you already created the assumption and then you're just going to tell them if you rejected or if you accepted that assumption. And then you're just going to tell why. Okay? Number two, collecting evidences or collecting data. Gaya nga ng sinabi ko sa inyo mga anak kanina, it is much better if the data was already available on hand. Okay? Okay, and then itong data naman na to, there's a lot of way how you're going to collect them. Okay? We have the primary way and then the secondary way to collect your data. Okay? So hindi na siya mahirap. Sir, bakit nga kailangan ulit available na yung data or the evidences once we make the hypothesis testing? Kasi nga po, we will be deciding if we will be rejecting or accepting the initial assumption. Okay? Babalik tayo dun una sa number one. Di ba? So, nag-create tayo ng assumption, that is just assumption. Okay, feeling ko lang yun, parang gut feeling ko lang yun na, ay, ito yung gusto kong i-claim, ganyan, ganyan. But later on, by the use of the data that we have, okay, and based on the computation po na magagawa po natin, okay, tsaka lang po tayo makakapag-decide ngayon if yung gut feeling natin or the assumption that we made is rejected or not. Okay? So, in statistical hypothesis, there is two types. So we have the null hypothesis and then the alternative hypothesis. Okay? Unahin kong i-discuss sa inyo si null hypothesis. Pag sinabi nating null hypothesis, mga anak, this is the statistical hypothesis na kung saan there will be no significant differences existing, okay, between the set of the variables. Meaning, there will be no difference between the two population means or two population parameter. Okay, ibig sabihin nun, equal lang po silang pareho. Okay? Null hypothesis is symbolized by H sub O. Okay, and it is denoted by mean 1 is just equal to your mean 2. Okay, since wala nga silang difference sa isa't isa. Okay, ibig kaya po yung symbol po na gagamitin natin for the denotation dito kay null hypothesis is equal sign. Okay, tandaan po yan ha. Pagdating kay null hypothesis, this is just about, or this is usually the hypothesis of equality between the population parameter. Okay? And then for the alternative hypothesis naman mga anak, this is just the uh, opposite or the inverse of the null hypothesis. Okay, it was symbolized by H sub 1, but in other book, you can see there H sub A, or in other references that you're going to look for, H sub A and then H sub 1 is just similar, and that is about the alternative hypothesis. Okay? Since opposite lang siya nung null hypothesis, meaning if the null hypothesis, there is no differences between the two population, pagdating po kay alternative, there will be or there is a difference between the two population means or parameter. Okay? So yan lang naman po yung statistical hypothesis na kakailanganin po natin later on the next topic. Okay? Then after natin mga anak uh, mahanap or ma-identify okay, yung null hypothesis natin and also the alternative hypothesis, we will be proceeding on the level of significance. If we say level of significance, mga anak, this is referring to the degree of the significance, which is this degree or this percentage, dito natin malalaman if we are going to accept or if we're going to reject the null hypothesis. Okay? So in hypothesis testing, 100% accuracy is not possible. Okay, for accepting or rejecting null hypothesis. So, ang usually ginagamit natin for the level of significance is 1% and then 5% para malapit siya doon sa sinasabi nating 100% accuracy. Okay? So, most researcher ang ginagamit po yung dalawa. Pero me, maybe on my examples here, baka po madalas po nating gamitin is 5%. Pero, syempre, since I introduced to you the 1%, teacher will give some examples also using the alpha or using the level of significance of 1%. By the way, aside from level of significance, tinatawag din natin siyang alpha. Okay? This is the symbol that we will be using for the level of significance. If hindi nyo po makikita sa word problem yung word na level of significance. Okay? Pag hindi nyo nakita, hanapin nyo lang po itong Greek letter na ito. And ito na po yung magsasabi sa inyo na itong number na to or itong percentage na to, siya yung level of significance. Okay? Again, this is alpha. After we chose or after we identify on the given or on the word problem the level of significance, okay, makikita ngayon natin mga anak based on the illustration na gagawin natin, the critical value. Okay? If you still remember mga anak yung topic natin before, okay, nung nag-i-introduce pa lang ako sa inyo ng normal distribution, and there was part on it na kung saan pinag-drawing ko din kayo or pinag-i-illustrate ko din kayo mga anak ng normal curve. Okay? And then meron kayong sinishade-shade na area. Okay? Halos pareho lang din yun dito ng gagawin natin on the hypothesis testing. Yun nga lang, magkaiba sila ng gamit. Okay? They're just the same in dun sa illustration na kung saan meron din tayong may pa-shade-shade din tayo dito. Okay, dun din kay normal, dito rin kay hypothesis. Pero on definition or in interpretation, magkaiba po sila. Okay? Kung doon sa example natin mga anak before kay normal distribution curve, once na naka-shaded siya, ibig sabihin, yun yung area ng normal curve na hinahanap natin. Or parang ang ginagawa natin is, hinahanap natin kung ilang percent yon. Pero pagdating dito mga anak kay hypothesis testing, okay, yung shaded area na yon, yun na po yung tinatawag natin na critical or rejection region. Okay? Ito yung part ng normal curve na kung saan once po, okay, na yung values natin dito po nag-fall or dito nag-lie. Okay, ibig sabihin po nun, we need to reject the null hypothesis. Okay, kapag po yung nakuhang value is nasakto doon or not literally nasakto, basta nandun siya sa range nung critical region or nung shaded area, we need to reject the null hypothesis. But on the other side, if the value of the test or yung nakuha natin, the value or the z computed or the computed value is nag-fall naman po doon sa non-critical or ito yung tinatawag natin before na unshaded area. Okay, ibig sabihin po nito mga anak, okay, we will be accepting or we will not be rejecting the null hypothesis. In short, okay, para mas mabilis nyo pong maunawaan, ang i-accept lang po natin at ang i-reject is the null hypothesis. Pero it depend pa rin naman po doon sa assumption natin, sa initial assumption. Kasi minsan mga anak, yung kiniklaim natin dito is hindi yung null hypothesis. Sometimes it is the alternative. And kapag sinabi nating claim or kapag sinabi nating initial assumption, yun yung kailangan nating patunayan. Therefore, yun yung kailangan nating sabihin if it is rejected or accepted. But that is just the same pa rin naman mga anak. Okay, if you're going to visualize it on your mind, it's still the same kasi nga they're just opposite of each other. Okay, once we rejected the null hypothesis, we will be accepting the alternative hypothesis. If we accept the null hypothesis, then we will be rejecting, okay, the alternative hypothesis. So, ganun pa rin naman po. So, wala naman po tang pinagbago. Yun nga lang, kailangan po natin ma-identify talaga po muna yung initial assumption or dito sa topic natin, yung kiniklaim po natin, yung gusto po nating patunayan. Okay? So, yan po yun yung critical and then the non-critical region. Now, let's talk about one-tailed and then the two-tailed test. So, hindi lang po dito basta-basta na magdo-drawing ka, okay, and then you're going to identify which side of your normal curve yung nakalagay yung critical region. Okay, very important din dito mga kay hypothesis testing na ma-identify natin if it is a one-tailed or two-tailed. Kasi po, magagamit natin ito pag hahanapin na natin yung area, okay, doon sa table po na ibibigay ko po sa inyo later on. So let me start. So there are two ways of carrying out statistical significance test. Okay, it was drawn from the population with respect to the test statistics, one-tailed or two-tailed. So, kapag po one-tailed, okay, ang inaano po natin, it's either it is lying on one side of the normal curve, it's either on the left or on the right side. Okay? And then kapag two-tailed naman, okay, ibig sabihin nun, it will be uh, in the both sides or in the both tails of the normal curve. So let me show you some illustration para po mas ma-visualize ninyo. So the picture here on the screen, okay, it tells you that this curve is one-tailed. Why? Because as you can see, nandun lang po siya sa left side. Okay? Or the region or merong particular region dyan, yung shaded, yung mas dark na blue, that's the critical region. Nandun lang siya sa isang side or nahahati lang po yung normal curve natin sa dalawang side. So the critical and then the non-critical region. Okay, kapag ganyan po, that's the left-tailed test since nasa left side siya. And as you can see mga anak, the level of significance used dito sa picture na makikita ninyo is 0.05. And that is also 5%. So the remaining area po for the non-critical region, we have 0.95 or 95%. Same thing pagdating po kay right-tailed. Okay, so syempre nandun naman siya sa right side because it's supposedly greater than on the assumed one or the assuming value that we have. Okay, so pag greater than, it means palaki ng palaki yung number. So nasa right side siya, still the same. So it depends on what percentage we will be using in the level of significance. Okay, so that is one-tailed. For the two-tailed, so, syempre, both sides na ngayon, both tail na nung normal curve natin makikita yung rejection and specifically the critical area. Okay? So, on this example, mga anak, as you can see, both sides have the level of significance of 5%. So, i-add natin yan. So, 5 plus 5, we have 10. So, ibig sabihin nun, yung unshaded area or the non-critical region is 90%. Okay? So, kailangan alam niyo po kung ilang percentage yan para po at least aware tayo. Okay, na hindi po lalagpas. Okay, yung computation natin doon sa mga area o lalong-lalo na dito sa area ng normal curve po natin. Okay, so that is the difference between the two-tailed, the one-tailed, and then the two-tailed. But, meron pa rin po silang connection pagdating po doon kay uh, statistical hypothesis. Okay, kasi, okay, we already identify the hypothesis, the null and then the alternative hypothesis. But how do we know if it is a one-tailed or two-tailed? Okay, so this is the relationship between the signs, okay, in hypothesis and the tails of the test. So ito yung mga signs na ma-encounter natin. So we have equal, not equal, greater than or equal, less than or equal, greater than, and then less than. Okay? So yan yung mga signs na ma-encounter natin. But, kailan natin malalaman if it is one-tailed or two-tailed? So, let's focus first on two-tailed. So, this part or this row is for the null hypothesis, and then this one is for the alternative. I do apologize for the typo error, ha? So this is not h sub 0. Supposedly it's h sub 1. Okay? H sub 1 for alternative. So let's start here in two-tailed test. Okay. Sa two-tailed test, mga anak, the symbol that we will be encountering is equal and not equal. Okay? Yan po yan. So kapag equal, may nakita tayong equal, may nakita tayong not equal, automatic that would be two-tailed test. Okay? For the left-tailed, kailangan yung null hypothesis natin is greater than or equal. Okay? And then, alternative lang nun, so parang opposite lang nun. So, kung greater than or equal yung null mo, less than naman dito. Less than or equal to. Pagdating naman kay right-tailed, the null hypothesis, kailangan lagi lang siyang less than or equal to. And then kapag alternative, just the opposite, greater than or equal to. So those are the symbols or the signs that we will be using for us to identify if the given is one-tailed or two-tailed. And specifically, pag kay one-tailed, kung nasa left po ba siya or nasa right. Okay? And here is also the common phrases that we can use, okay, in hypothesis testing. But I'm not saying na ito na po yun lahat. Okay, it's better for you guys kung magre-research pa kayo ng different phrases na maaari natin gamitin for hypothesis testing. Kasi po, let's say, there will be a time na yung ibibigay ko po sa inyo na phrases will not be found on this table. Okay? So I want you to challenge yourself and to look for different phrases pa po na pwede po natin gamitin for the hypothesis testing. Just like here, we have equal, and here are the common phrases that we can use for equal sign. We have equal to, the same as, exactly the same as. And for the not equal sign, we have not equal to, not the same, different from. For greater than, we have increased, greater than, higher than. For the less than sign, decreased, less than, lower than. And then for the greater than or equal, we have at least, not less than, greater than or equal to. And for the less than or equal to, we have at most, not greater than, and then less than or equal to. So again, those are common phrases lang. So don't limit yourself on those phrases na nakikita nyo ngayon on screen. And it's better if you can find or search for another phrases that we can use for those signs. Okay? And here is the illustration, mga anak, ng one-tailed and then ng two-tailed. And also, identifying which part of the normal curve will be the rejection region. Okay? So, for example, this first picture, this is a right-tailed. As you can see, the rejection region was on the right side of the normal curve. And again, once po na nag-fall po dito yung value natin, yung computed value natin, meaning we need to reject the null hypothesis. Okay? And this one is for the left tailed, since it was on the left side of the normal curve. And on the bottom part of this PowerPoint slide, this is the two tailed, since both sides or both tailed of the normal curve, meron na po siyang rejection region. Okay? So, ganyan po siya. So that will be the introduction for the hypothesis testing.